Hello, I'm Deanne Mealy. Welcome to Deanne's Art Studio. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. I've been receiving questions, or a lot of interest, I should say, in my impressionistic fruit portraits I've been posting on social media. So I thought today I would give you a glimpse into a little bit of my techniques. Now, I do tend to paint these pretty quick, and I know not everyone has time to sit down and paint for even 30 minutes to an hour, or if you're not familiar with the technique, you are a little bit intimidated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the underpainting process of the fruit, and then I'm going to step away, stop the recording, and post this on YouTube for you to look at. And then we'll come back. Either I'll come back later today or even tomorrow and record the rest of it to share with you how you would come back after your paints have maybe set up and tacked or even completely dried, because sometimes we just don't have time to sit down and paint a complete painting and we'd like to come back to it. So today I'm going to be using mainly Paint It Simply Basic 6, but I guess I did augment it a little bit. I really am finding that as I'm growing in my artistic journey, I enjoy having a variety of colors and hues at my fingertips, and it just, variety is the spice of life. And so as an artist, it's really nice to expand your horizons and your tools just a bit and have those colors at hand. So I do tend to, if something's a little bit too warm, I'll reach over for a cooler color that maybe isn't in part of the Paint It Simply, but don't be worried about that. I will post a list of colors in the YouTube section down at the bottom. It'll have a complete list of supplies that I use and what you would need to have, or options that you can use for the second part, etc. Now, I am going to start off with two brushes. I am in love with the Global Art Supplies new Fusion long handles. I probably should buy 2 or 3 3/4 inch flats. Beautiful brush. I find myself using it often. And then I also use the number 10 flat, so the long handle. Now what this allows me to do is, and you can see kind of over in the side of the picture that you're looking at right now, the angle of the camera, that I am able to sit back and really paint casually. I get a nice view from this. I can lean in and get real tight, but I don't want my painting to be super tight. And I'm finding that this is really changing the way I paint. It's loosening me up, and that's the key to it. If you're used to painting really, really tight and you're like, oh my gosh, Deanne, I love your casual fruit, one thing you can do to become a little bit more casual is change your tools. Change the way you sit, change the way you approach. So let me switch over to the other camera so I can show you what paints I'm using. And you could see up in the other angle that I had my full global palette over to the side so that you could kind of see it. So there it is, it's right here. And so I have all the colors available to me. But right now what I have out is I have titanium white, I have Dairylide yellow. Now this color right now is straight out of the jar tube. I have not globalized it. I'll probably put a little bit of extender in it and make it workable if I need to as I go. This is yellow oxide, Hansa yellow, pine green, Naphthol red light, and this is Naphthol crimson. And you can see up here I put a little bit, just a little spot of a mix. It's a Paint It Simply mix. That color is toned yellow green. And when I'm teaching, a lot of my students like to pre-mix or mix just a little. It gives you a jumping off point so that you're not having to sit there and struggle with technique, skill building, new medium, new brushes, a new instructor, all at the same time. So that's okay if you need to pre-mix just a little bit of a springboard. Now, I won't use that toned yellow-green mix straight. I'll be adding some black to it, I'll add some white to it. I change it as I go. So let me switch over to show you what we're going to be working with. Now, this board here that you're looking at, I think I'll measure it for you. I think it's like a 12 by 12, just a gallery wrapped canvas that you can get. It's not your low-end quality. It is primed a little smooth. I haven't done anything to it but take it out of the wrapper. So we're going to start with just this square canvas. These are great that you can purchase these and use them for your practices and not feel like, they run a lot of good sales on them, so it doesn't really matter. If you get a very coarse canvas, mine, I noticed that this one is a little smoother. You may want to add a little bit of our sealer to it, not too much. You don't want it to be too slick. I do like the porousness. Let's see, maybe coat it with some white, titanium white, just to smooth it just a little bit. But the, you know, texture is your friend and it adds interest. So anyway, so let's get started with this. And remember, I'm going to use two brushes. I'm going to start with the 3/4 flat. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to get a freehand. Don't turn off the channel right now. Bear with me. You got this. We are going to freehand kind of the shape of the fruit, and then we'll go from there. So remember, let me see if I can switch over to the other camera for you so you can see my paint. Now, I'm going to come in and I'm going to pull down some titanium white, and you by no means need to keep your palette this clean. I just thought it would be easier for you guys to be able to see what I'm doing if I am able to show that to you, okay? So if it's not all run together yet. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to want to put a little bit of a hint of a background into this, but I'm going to keep this very, very casual. So I'm going to pick up some of this bright green. Now, this green is extremely intense. And remember, in your background, you don't want the intensity to fight with your subject matter. So I'm going to have to tone this a little bit. And by toning it, I can do a couple different things. I could pull down an earth color, brown, or, you know, an umber, or I could tone it with red, which is across the color wheel from it. So I'm going to choose to do that. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of the Naphthol red light, and you'll see that it really, really changes that color quite a bit. I might, just because I'm a girl who likes to play in her colors and pick up different things, I like to discover. I don't think play is probably the proper word choice for me, but I really enjoy discovering color. I may have warmed that just a little too much, so I could pull over some phthalo blue just to give myself some options and variation. And I'm going to lighten it even more. Notice I'm just brush mixing, you know, on my palette. It doesn't matter. This color is pretty cool. So we'll switch over to the front camera so you can see what I'm going to do with this. Now, I'm going to take this brush, and I am choked way back on the brush, okay? And I am just going to make myself some scribbles, and you can see I'm scribbling into that canvas. I'm scribbling on some of this color. Now, the canvas is very, very dry, so you can go over and pick up a little more extender. I keep, this is like a candle cup or a salt cellar or something, works real well. I pick up in the corner of my brush just a little bit. Got a hair in there. Cat hairs show up everywhere, don't they? And I can wet this paint up, you know, some, so I make it a little more workable. I'm going to come over into my canvas, and in the center, now, I really have enjoyed not base coating, you know, going back to the old adage of prepping the entire background, just kind of getting myself some workable color. Green seems appropriate to me with the apples. And so I will just kind of get some of this color in there. Now, variation can be the key to interest, of course. So I can come over and pick up a little bit of this, just a different green. I'm not even worried about, you can see that this is warmer, lighter. This is where the phthalo blue, I'm probably going to stay out of the phthalo for right now. I don't want to get it too cool. You want to start with warms. Remember, it's much easier to cool a warm than it is to warm a cool. So we can start by coming in, and I might deepen this just a little bit in the center. If I'm going to do, at this point in my head, I'm thinking, well, you know, what am I after? Am I after a portrait of one apple? Am I after something, maybe giving you something's coming off of a branch? Being that this is a square, I'm probably going to use this more as an apple portrait than I would, you know, a single apple than I would a branch. Now, I'm going to come in and I'm going to switch over to this number, here it is right here. See which camera I'm on. I'm switching over to my number 10 flat, and I'll go back over to the palette, and I'm just putting a little extender in it because I don't remember, you know, when last I used this brush, and I'm just going to pinch wipe it. So when you pinch wipe, I just take paper towel lightly so that I have a wet brush. I'm going to go into this pine green, and I may go over and pick up just a little bit of base brown. Now, base brown in this line is when you are pre-mixing for the Paint It Simply, or, we have a base brown. And what's really cool, and I think I covered that in another video, so if you go down and watch some of my introductions to the paint line, you can see I use base brown, which is Naphthol red light in black, and it's like 4-to-1 or something. It doesn't matter, just a red and black together will make this base brown. You can shift it by warming it with a little bit of Hansa, or you can warm it, if it shifts to green, then add more red. You could shift it with some yellow oxide. So whatever color you're looking for, that's what you're going to want to, work with there. So I'm coming in and I'm getting a little brown. I do want to green my brown up just a little bit. Let me pull some more over on the palette so it doesn't look like I'm being sparing. I'm not sure why I was being so careful. Usually I'm not very careful. So I'll pick up some of this brown and I'll add some greens and stuff, anything off of my palette. And then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, okay, if I want this to be an apple portrait, now I've kind of come across my background. I'm not very committed at this point, but I could say, well, maybe I'll have some sort of, tree coming in. Maybe there's a branch, and this doesn't have to be very committed yet, okay? Maybe the shape of my apple, maybe it could come in. The one that we're going to focus on might come in like this. Maybe I want it even bigger. And notice, okay, so now I have some brown or blackish brown color that's going to be the outside of my apple. It doesn't matter at this point. This is just to get yourself a guideline. Where is the stem going to come in? Maybe I'm going to bring that in somewhere. Maybe it'll come in right here. And I know that I'll need some sort of belly, kind of a pit, a top to that apple. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself some guideline to that. And maybe because it's hanging on the tree, you're going to be able to see down very low. I don't want to get too much dark into it right now, but that will give me, so that's going to give me a base, something to start with, okay? Now, this background can change a gazillion times from the time that you start painting until you're actually committed. So no worries about that. The other thing I can do, maybe back here, I'm gonna pinch wipe my brush so that I get some of that brown off of it. I'm gonna use my fingers. Your fingers are your friend. Now, if you do your fingers, make sure you wipe your finger, okay? Because you'll have it everywhere. This stem, this branch is a little bold right now. It does not matter. Don't get excited about that. I may take and maybe I want to have some sort of faded out background apple that's hanging behind this one, and I'm just going to lightly sketch in, and there it is. So what else could I have? Maybe up here I'm going to put something, just scribbling with my brush, a circular, so I'll remember that I want to have something fade away out that way, and maybe I want to fade out here. Now, I do like to take and come in with those same colors. I may actually lighten my brown by just adding just a hint of white to it. So let me switch over and show you that. Adding a hint of white to that. I'll come over and I'm warming it with the yellow, and then I'm lightening it with the brown, okay? And I don't change the entire color puddle here. I like to see where I've been, how dark I was, so that my eye can compare it right there. So I'm not going to continue to be too dark or too light, or, so if you're looking at where you came from and use all your colors there, it makes it a lot easier when you get over onto the palette. It also will train your eye to see color. So what I'm thinking right now is, it'll soften it, and this is just a reminder for me. If I come down with a branch, maybe I'm going to put some sort of leaf out here. I might have some sort of something. I always line them up perfectly. I don't know why, so I'll fix that later. It's okay. Compositionally, I'd like it not to be so lined up. I'm going to reload just a little bit. Maybe something, and this is very non-committal, but this is where some of my shadow leaves and things come from. And am I worried about the real shape of them right now? Obviously not. There might be some things just to lead your eye through my design at some point. And I just do some of this scribbly stuff. It's very casual. What happens is later on it becomes movement in my actual painting. And I've had some emails and some social media messages asking me like, oh my gosh, I wish I could just do a background or do that ghost stuff like you do it. Well, this is kind of, ladies and gentlemen, this is how it starts. I just kind of, okay, let me remember to get a little more casual back there. And by scribbling like that, what happens is it helps you so that you're able to just, paint a little looser. And this can be a practice. It doesn't matter. Some of my best pieces start out for a practice. So let me find my way in painting maybe casually an apple. And then all of a sudden it turns out to be some of my best work up to date. So, never count your journey. Never think that a practice piece maybe is going to, just die today and you can't resalvage it or anything like that. We don't know sometimes what kind of painting day you're going to have. And I've been known to take really pretty pieces and just paint them out and paint over it again because, it's all about you and your journey. So every single piece you paint, my point is, doesn't have to be a complete, total work of art. The important thing is you're painting, you're practicing, and you're challenging yourself a little bit, trying to stretch yourself so you can grow. So, and the reason I'm talking to you so much and then taking breaks from it is I like my paint to set up just a little bit. So as things start to tack up a little bit, I can start layering over it. Now remember with this, because we have globalized, and I may not have said that to start, but I'll put that in the instructions, globalize the paints. By globalizing means that with this Heritage Multimedia Acrylics, I have taken and replaced some of the water that's in it, let it evaporate out, and I've replaced it with extender. What's beautiful about these paints is you can use them straight out of the tube as regular acrylics, but they're pure pigments, or you can globalize them. We can also emulate watercolor techniques, so there's so much you can do. So they're very versatile. Now, when I'm looking at this apple, I'm like, I may have those edges a little too dark, so this is good so I can show you how I would overcome something like that. Now, at this point in time, for my composition, I'm going to start thinking, well, do I want this to be a yellow apple, maybe a red apple? If I'm not going to commit, I may make it kind of part of both at this point. You're not going to go with the reddest of reds if you're going to do a red apple. I also don't want to cool it too much. So what I tend to do is I'll come in and I'll start in with a little bit of maybe yellow oxide. I love Dairylide. Remember I told you Dairylide yellow is not globalized. It's also a transparent color, so it really makes for a nice warmth of golden warmth underneath the layers that you're going to put over it. You could pull down some yellow, Hansa yellow, and some white if you want. And all this will do is just give us some underpainting to have some workability. So back over to the canvas. I'm going to come in with, first of all, some of that yellow oxide I was showing you. And I might just tap in the center. Now remember, every time you touch the apple, it's wet. So you're picking up green paint as well. So when you do this, you want to just tap in and then you want to pinch white. All right, so I'm going to tap in some color. I'm off and I pinch white. I'm going to go back over to the palette. And, I could even maybe get away with using this 3/4 inch brush so it moves a little faster. So what I'm doing is I just neutralize it with a little extender and pull a little of that green, just kind of pinch wipe so the green comes out of it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to pick up quite a bit of this yellow ox. I like to add some of this Dairylide yellow to that yellow ox. So yellow oxide and Dairylide yellow. And I'm going to come back over with quite a bit of paint and I'm going to just tap in. There we go. Now we can get some paint. If you get a little goober in it, if you don't want that texture, you can remove it. Every time I stroke this though, now my apple is becoming greener and greener. It looks more green on camera than it actually does in person. So I want to reload often. Also, remember the Dairylide is a transparent color. So I can come in and add some white to my brush and tap in. I am rocking and rolling my brush. I'm not just pulling straight. If you can see that, let me see if I can pull it over to the camera. So my brush is loaded. That's after I touch the apple. So let me pinch wipe and reload so you can see it. I'll just show you my brush. So it's loaded like this. I got quite a bit on there. And then I just kind of pull. But every time you notice, I will rock and roll because I just did this and picked up green into my brush. So I'm going to turn it. And I'm just trying to get my color out over that apple. All right, and I did get my edges a little dark, so how I'm going to compensate for that is I'm going to come back over to my palette. I'm going to pick up this yellow ox. Yellow oxide is not a transparent color, so the best thing I can do is to kind of go a little thicker. This is for the underpainting, so it doesn't matter. It's for the underpainting. So I can pick up that color a little thicker on my 3/4 inch brush, and then I can come in and maybe I'm going to just keep the shape of the apple on both sides, and you're going to have to pinch wipe in order to, you're picking up some of that dark. Now to me, I really like that, okay? There's quite a bit of texture. Let me see if I can zoom in without making you nauseous here. There we go. So you can see the texture right here. And also, I can't even come in my camera right now this tight. I can't even show you the end of the brush and my hand. That's the distance that I'm painting back from there. I'm not tight on this at all. Okay, so that's going to matter for you to be kind of loose. So I'm getting some yellows. Notice I didn't cover up everything. You can still see some greens. That was from that slip slap background. That's going to add interest later. You don't have to cover everything up. I still see the dark, and I'm not completely content with that. So let me shift over to the palette camera, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of this Naphthol red light and just kind of work that into my brush, and I'll pick up any of that yellow that's over there. And then I'm going to come back to my piece, and I'm going to go ahead and commit to doing just a little bit of red. Now, that's going to all go orange very quickly. Why is that? That is because, don't forget, that's because you are picking up the everything that's underneath. So if you have underneath, you have yellow, and then I stroke red over it, what does yellow and red make? That yellow and red is going to make orange, or in this case, because Naphthol red light is a very warm red, it kind of first will give you a red orange, but so that's okay. We can redden up our orangey apple later on. Don't let that bother you. Just be very casual about it. So 3 strikes and you're out. If you keep stroking and stroking and stroking on this, you're going to have one color. So you want to tap your color in and push it around and then get out. You can also, your finger can blend, and I'm going to go ahead and soften my edge. Now, why I'm softening my edge is because that color works really nice if it works, it looks nice later if it works out into the background. Now, I picked up just a little more of that Naphthol red light, and notice my apple is growing. That's fine. It's growing over beyond the dark edge that I had, which is really helping, it's helping me overcome having a little bit too dark of an edge at that point in time. It's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and come over and maybe I'll pick up a little bit of pine green, and I can even slide some of that color up under. And I'm just looking for interest in my background because my apple is very, very wet right now, okay? So since my apple is very wet, everything it's picking up, so I want stuff to start tacking up. So we're almost to the point where we're gonna let everything tack up for a little bit. Say you don't have any more time to work on it today, or you need to come back to it, you wanna come back to it later on today or even tomorrow. So that's what I wanted to show you, because I do get receive a lot of emails and social media questions about, you know, how do you come back to something tomorrow and re-wet it? My students ask me that all the time. So sometimes we work 1 week to the next, and they aren't painting on that particular piece at home. So they got to understand how to come back and work back into their piece. And sometimes that just gives you the best interest, and you get some of the best paintings that way. So that's okay. Now, this apple behind here, let me switch to that down camera so you can see. The apple that's going to be behind the other one, I'm going to make it a little cooler. This Naphthol red, it's not Naphthol red light now, is a warm. Naphthol red is cool in relation to Naphthol red light. So I'm going to pick up some of that in my brush, and I'm going to brush mix with just a little Naphthol red light. Do those colors really matter that you have them, you know, all exactly like I do? No. Cooler red. I do not have red violet on my palette yet. Red violet, you know, we use that. It's the coolest color in that Paint It Simply 6. So when you have that on your palette, it will cool everything. I chose not to put that on the palette yet because I didn't want you to overcool to the point where you can't do anything else, okay? You just have a cool apple, and then you have a pink apple, And remember, it's easier to cool a warm than it is to warm a cool. So we have to kind of keep that in our mind. Can you overcome it? Yes, you can. It's just that you're going to have to work a little harder at it. And I'm all about working smarter and not harder. So that's why I'm starting with warmer colors and not having that red violet on my palette. Good grief, my palette yet. So just to recap, I'm picking up some Naphthol red and Naphthol red light. And I'm not over blending. I'm just kind of tapping, and I have it there on my brush. Okay, so I have a little bit of a variety so that you can see it. And I'm going to come over, and on this one back here, now I may have to actually pinch wipe. I may have gotten just a little bit too much for you guys because you guys are going to have a heavy hand. I can control how much pressure I put without, because I've been doing it for a little bit, and you learn the paint as you go. Now, oh my goodness, is that an apple? It is an apple. It will be an apple. It's going to be a beautiful kind of behind the other guy and not the star of the show apple, okay? So you can see clearly that he is much cooler than this one, all right? Now, I will also at this point, before we stop for this round, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit of white to that, just brush mix, tap, a little bit of white to that color I created down on my palette. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to take and just kind of get just a little bit of some opacity in there, and you can kind of see that. See, that'll give me a lot to work with. I'm not worried about these edges at all. I'm not worried that it really looks the complete shape of an apple. If that bothers you, one thing I do just to make sure that I keep the shape, round shape, is I'll go ahead and paint through my guy that's underneath. And you're like, oh no, you had such a beautiful yellow apple happening right there. That's okay. I'll just pick up a little bit thicker of my yellow and white mix and paint right back over. But that way I know that I get a complete sphere, okay? Because sometimes if you don't do that, you'll end up with a cockeyed apple. And not every apple in Mother Nature, not every single apple is going to be, a perfect round sphere. But anyway, so it'll help you when you're trying to do your composition, okay? I understand that. Now, I also want to maybe give the idea that there's something else back here. So I can go ahead with that dirty brush. Let me widen the shot just a little bit. There you go. I can give the idea there's something. Be careful. I've kind of created myself a little triangle of color. So I'm going to do something scribbly down here just so I can remind myself later to carry my color and move it around. All right. So just to recap, we're kind of pulling in stems. Or a limb, whatever. We can lighten this up later. If the darkness, the contrast of light to dark right there is bothering you, you can go in, let me shift over to the palette cam. You can go in at any time. Now there is a color that is medium white. We sell that. You can buy that already pre-mixed, or you can mix it yourself. I just happen to have some mixed in my palette. So I can pick up some medium white and some of that brown that I had over there. Now, to me, this is kind of looking a little, if you will, like a purple tone. It's got a coolness to it. So I'm going to go over into my yellow ox, seems to be the one that I keep going to warm anything back up. And since I have that color, now look here at my brush. It's got some green in it. I haven't cleaned. On the other side, it's got some reds and, now some pinks. It's got some yellow. And where in the world did the brown go, right? So I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to strike over this limb very casually. And everything, we know this one's going to have something coming to it. Scribble some more color. It doesn't matter, okay? That is crazy looking, right? So we can fix that later. We'll define it into a limb. And while it's wet, if you feel better coming in with some toned, some of that base brown, giving yourself a little bit of the hint of contrast and all coming in, you may do that. Don't get too worried about your apple stem coming in, because that's going to change several times. That's how I paint. I can give myself an underneath of the apple. One thing I do see, I'm going to pinch wipe this off pretty well and lay it aside. And I'm going to go back to my number 10 flat. and I'm pinch wiping because I don't recall what in the world it has in it. And I'm going to pick up a little, any of the yellows that are on our palette right now. I may take and just use my finger to wipe some of this out. And I think right now I want to, just to remind myself to create the underneath of that sphere, I'm going to tap some yellow in because I think I'll really like that later when it starts to dry. It might take me a couple times of application to get what I want. I just picked up yellow with a little more white in it, and I can do that a couple times. You know, whatever you need to do. I'm using yellow oxide and white. I can come in and just looking for a base, A few times, pinch white. I can come back in because I know that we're going to leave this to tack up, put a little bit of color. Maybe I want some green under there, and I'm going to go in with that toned yellow green, that real pretty one. Let me show you over here. This yellow green, I'm going to pull it down over here into my mixes. This was my background mix, and so I'm just going to get myself just a little, let me turn it, a little bit of that color. There you go. Let it give it a second to focus. Is it? Maybe. Can you see it? There we go. You can see the color that's on the brush. So it's not quite toned yellow green without, you know, straight, meaning that the mix, but I've just kind of dirty brushed it into everything. And let me switch over. And in this yellow apple, I'm thinking, you know, I may want to carry some greens, a little bit more green in there. So I'm just going to tap. Now you can see how wet that is, that everything, let me zoom in just a little more. Now try not to make you nauseous. You can see how wet everything is. So I could take my finger and squish and mush if I want, but you're going to overblend. The key is don't worry about it right now. You do not want to overblend. If you want to soften the bottom of your apple, you know, and that might be a little tall, but I can worry about all that stuff later. But if you want to make sure you have the shape, you can do that, okay? Because I may have it just a tad tall. Oh, let me widen the shot for you. Oh, that was the wrong direction. I apologize. No, I didn't lose anybody, right? So there at a distance is what I have. There's a few things I could come in and do with my larger brush with the background. I can come in maybe with add a little bit of white, you know, to my brush and maybe soften some edges. I am just not really worried about it right now. But if if you're wanting to soften things, I've been known to come in with white and almost like painting back out so that I have a little bit more casual. See how I'm doing that? And if everything looks like it's going this direction, there's nothing to stop you from coming in. What if we come in, and I'm just looking at some things I can go ahead and get in this before we break. What if I come in with a little bit of green and slice the other way? And maybe I can go across that too. Okay, so all of that, you know, there's a lot you can do to start softening the edge. If I look like I have a line right here, and maybe later I'm not going to want that line, I could even bring white. It looks like I had a little blue in my brush, but that's okay. Just something just to kind of use your finger and soften that edge, okay? But don't overblend. Don't sit there and make everything the same. That's why you got to know when to stop, okay? So if you just want to, if it's bugging you a lot, soften it a little bit, but please, by no means make it a perfect background, okay? Because that's what we're trying to get away from. I can even come in and maybe, you know, I lost some of my other darks, so maybe I want to, you know, establish something, some other limbs and things that are going to be happening, and they'll ghost out later. But some of this stuff, though, if it's ghost and you mush in just a little bit, later on you still see that movement, and it's like, oh wow, that's kind of neat. So if you want to give movement, you can always get rid of it if it's in the wrong place later. That's not a big deal, okay? So right now what we have is we've put in our limb coming in. We have we did a little bit of green. We have put in some base colors for our apple to start setting up a little bit. And I just noticed something I think I want to do before we stop is tap in a little bit more red, okay? So tap in red, and notice I am not going to overblend. I'm just getting myself a little bit of red there, okay? And let me switch so I can see you. And so I'm going to let this piece sit on the easel right now, and it doesn't matter. Maybe you can't come back to it for a couple days. Maybe you want to come back later in the evening and paint and finish it. And that's what I do. It's okay if it sits there and, you know, dries. But right now, for me, because I'm on such a small piece, if I was on a big canvas with, you know, painting a lot of apples at one time, that would be okay. I would be able to work around the canvas, and chances are, depending on what region or how wet or dry it is, wherever you live or wherever your studio is, you would be able to work around and then come back. There's something to be said about paint that becomes sticky. It's like just that right amount that you're ready to move it. Sometimes I come back and it's dried too much, and that's what we're going to address in the next video. So this is Casual Apple Portrait Techniques Part 1. And please get yourself a 12 by 12 or an 8 by 8, 10 by 10, whatever, a square, and get this far on it. And then if you need to go back and watch again, do so. And then I'm going to see you on the next video that I'll post. I'm going to post one and then the other almost at the same time, so you'll go ahead and have the complete version. But we'd love for you to follow us on Facebook, Deanne's Art Studio. Sign up for my newsletter, deannesartstudio.com. And we have a lot of exciting things coming up. I'm actually going to launch an online class coming late this fall into winter, so that we can paint together on a more regular basis. I'll do some intro techniques, and we'll also do we'll kind of advance into some more advanced techniques, if you will. I enjoy teaching you all and sharing everything, and I hope that you're enjoying this too. So remember, click the follow button, like it down there, so that you can always get notified when I'm posting. And heck, if you're already on this first part of the apples and I get it posted and you want to hear the second part, go ahead and just click subscribe, okay? We also carry everything you need to paint using Heritage Multimedia Acrylics. My studio, myself, I'm Global Art Supply Southeast, and I would love to provide you with what you need and some guidance along the way in your art journey. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time right here at Deanne's Art Studio. Click the subscribe and the like button. Have a great day.